Well, that was ugly. That is an awful way to end a series as the Rockies, 9 runs, they put up 12 hits, typically pretty good, but not when your opponent puts up 17 runs on 24 hits. That's the story of the game as the Colorado Rockies lose their series finale to the Minnesota Twins by a final score of 17-9. They won on Tuesday. They lost on Monday and Wednesday. We'll break it all down right here on your Locked On Rockies postcast.
You are Locked On Rockies postcast, powered by Mile High Sports, part of Locked On Sports Denver on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is Locked On Sports, your team every day. Appreciate you guys rocking with us on this Wednesday after a pretty awful loss for the Colorado Rockies, who go down 17-9 in the series finale with the Minnesota Twins. And today's episode of the Locked On Rockies postcast is presented by our friends over at eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to customers in the United States. More on eBay Motors in a minute, but I am joined on today's Locked On Rockies postcast, a little bit of a local crossover episode with my guy, Paul Holden, who is the standard host of the standard Locked On Rockies podcast, and kind enough to jump on with me for, I wish it was under better circumstances, but we got to talk about this club. What's going on, Paul?
I'm happy to finally be here. It's exciting to finally chat with you. I feel like you owe the official channel a brief hello, just so we can introduce you to all of our everydayers on there. So give us at least the quick intro for the folks who haven't made which is crazy. I know the ones that haven't gone and haven't tuned in, because folks, what's exciting about not only what we're doing today is I can finally give you a slice of what you've been doing for a couple of weeks now. So give the folks a quick introduction to who you are for the everydayers that haven't met you yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Media by AP. But long story short, I'm a baseball lifer. I'm a baseball guy. And my full-time job is over here at a local media outlet called Mile High Sports. Be sure to check us out on social over there. But the postcast initiative, at least in Denver, is a little bit of a crossover between Mile High Sports and Locked On Sports, with the Locked On Rockies postcast being the first step in that endeavor. So if you're on the audio feeds, obviously, Paul, you're talking about the visual feeds and whatnot. If you ever hear this random loud East Coast styling voice, that's me. And you're probably wondering what a postcast is. It's essentially a live show that is happening within a few minutes after the game ending, where we'll give some instant reactions, some instant thoughts and opinions. So make sure to subscribe to that Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel as we build this bad boy up. But as I like to say, Paul, we'll laugh together. We'll cry together a lot, like we might today after that 17-9 loss. But all things Colorado Rockies baseball between myself and yourself right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Can't beat it, Aniello. And, it was an interesting series, I think, to start, where it's kind of a classic Rockies road series where they fall flat, and then Cal Quantrill, you got to give it up to Cal Quantrill. And then this last one, you can kind of pull from a million things. Austin Gomber has been great in May. The regret, a regression was kind of, I hate how much we have to say it, because I criticize Bud Black for saying it. The Rockies did get a little baseballed today, just in terms of that, but not to the point of setting history again. It's another example of the Rockies setting the wrong type of history. This is one of the worst losses by statistical performance in Rockies history. It's one of the highest team ERAs allowed in a game. Every single member of the starting lineup for the Twins not only got a hit, if I'm hearing correctly on the broadcast. So this is something. Not only did they all get a hit, they all got an RBI as well. Right. So that's a problem. Too many times the Rockies have failed at this high of a level, and I know in the grand scheme of things it's just another loss, but there've been far too many of these, and these type of losses we kind of were hopefully getting a feeling that we were getting away from as Rockies fans with the way this team was playing lately.
Well, and that's the thing. And I actually think this is probably like the first just disgusting loss that I've had to talk about since I've started doing this Locked On Rockies postcast. But to your point, Paul, the Rocky fan is kind of conditioned to this, for lack of a better phrase. And it felt like for a while they were like, hey, because it's one thing to lose a game like what they lost to St. Louis on Sunday 5-1, I want to say. Like it's one thing when it's like a semi-close game and the offense doesn't do their job, you know, or the starting pitcher gets rocked and you lose 8-2, right? It's a whole nother ball game when you give up 17 runs. And to your point, I just confirmed it. Yes, every single person that hit for the Minnesota Twins today had at least one RBI, including their pitch hitter Kepler. Max Kepler had an RBI in his one at bat. And so it's just crazy when things tend to spiral out of control. And the one optimistic point of view that I try to take is it doesn't matter if you lose 17-9 or if you lose 2-0, right? A loss is a loss. It still counts the same in the column. But at the end of the day, like, just a disheartening way for a team that in May had a winning record, trying to find their
yeah, and it's been an instance where I feel like this team I talk about it all the time. They're so inconsistent, and it's not just the actual everything they do, they're inconsistent, but as a team, it's, here, look at this. They rattle off 7-game win streak, right? Then it's a mixed bag of, I think they went on another skid of a couple of games. The Rockies can't get out of this endless loop of, here's a solid little stretch, and then we're going to completely wash it away with, lackluster performance. All in all, for the Rockies to finish this road trip just one game below 500 isn't that bad in the context of how bad the Rockies are on the road. But then you think about the losses that the Rockies had in these road series where they just don't seem like they have an answer. And the Rockies scored 8 runs in this finale. I mean, that's, 8 runs will win you a lot of ball games, but it just seems like the Rockies can't help but just, here's the solid stretch, wash it all away with another 5-game skid right after. It really does seem the Rockies are stuck one step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate sign of that is, and I got to do the mental math in my head, but I believe there's something like 7-31 against teams below 500 this year, and now there'll be 1 game above 500 against teams with winning records. And I don't know how to summarize that, because in theory, you should probably lose to the teams that are better than you and beat the teams or play 500 ball against the bottom feeders, and that has not been the case. So, I don't know what the deal is with this team. And look, I love Buddy Black. Sometimes it is just baseball. Sometimes it is just the way that everything shakes out, right? But when it's all said and done, it's just hard to build any momentum or feel good about the direction in which this team is going if you're going to be embarrassed in these games.
Yeah, that's the thing too, where it's just, it's again, I as much as I think this is another example of where I think the Bud Black experience is starting to wear thin. I props to Bud Black for getting his 500th win with the Rockies. I know, and I appreciate what he can do, but again, I'm just not seeing him be able to rebound. I'm just not seeing this team play inspired baseball consistently. And I know that's not just Bud Black, but Bud Black keeps playing. Why is Jake Cave consistently getting starts still? And Greg Jones is just sitting on the bench and then being put in late in the game to pinch hit. And no wonder his one start, he's going to strike out the whole time. And it's like, there's just so many things where I'm kind of just, it's run its course. And I just am waiting for Bud Black to make the adjustment, not continue to make the same moves that we expect from him. Like I said, the Amador move was pretty surprising for all intents and purposes. But with that, Brendan Rodgers is coming back, and that's going to kind of resolve itself. But there's a lot of stuff with Buddy that I'm just losing confidence in. I just don't think he's been really helping the Rockies put themselves in a bunch of situations to win lately.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I listened to your episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast from, I want to say, on Monday. And I agree with your Jake Cave point, because like, I know Drew Goodman and company are always like on the broadcast, like every time Jake Cave's in the lineup, he figures out a way to do something productive, whether it's base hits or RBI. He has made some good defensive plays, but the Rockies are not in like win now mode. And if you're trying to build for the future and you've got a 22-year-old shortstop in Ezekiel Tovar and a 21-year-old in Adel Amador, like, and I know Nolan Jones and Brenton Doyle are 26, I want to say off the top of my head, but like it does nothing for the current, like look at Charlie Blackmon, right? And I know that's probably not the best example because he's been here for forever and he's a household name, but like that to me is the right way to kind of deploy a veteran in that perspective, right? Because yeah, he takes on a little bit more of a mentorship role, but like you want these guys to learn as they go along. And when you're playing a lot of these journeymen, you're going to take away playing time from some of these young and up and comers that you're hoping are going to be the future of your franchise.
Yeah, and I think that's on full display with Greg Jones. I mean, this is a guy that the Rockies traded an interesting pitching prospect for, which is a really weird move. And for him to be called up to it does not make the Rockies have the history of doing this, calling people up and having them sit on the bench or play, come into field in the 8th inning of games and then get maybe an at bat. That consistency is just incredibly frustrating. And at this season, these are the points you got to figure that out because Jake Cave's not factoring into this team in, down the line. But if you're trading an interesting pitching prospect for Jones, you're clearly interested in what he can do and bring to the table. And this is the perfect chance because with Bouchard out, with Bryant out, with all of these names that are on the IL, this is the time for Greg Jones to actually have a chance to perform and go out in the field. But instead, it's Jake Cave getting start after start after start. When in reality, and again, like you said, you're blinded by the veteran, the solid veteran aspect of the play. And then you look at his numbers, and you're like, "Holy crap!" Jake Cave is batting below 250, and his on base percentage is terrible. Like, there's so many other ways the Rockies can go, and I just that's where I think that is getting lost a little bit in this season as the Rockies continue to rely on I don't know, savvy veteran play that really they're not getting.
And like I said, it makes no sense it makes sense if you're in win now mode, right? Or you're contending for a wild card spot, when you have some holes and you need some veteran presence and whatnot to fill them up. But that's just not the case right now for the Rockies. So real quick before we hit our first break, a look at the pitching line for Austin Gomber today. Absolutely shelled. 3 innings pitched, 11 hits, 8 earned runs, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. His ERA now up to 4.26, so not good. And offensively, Chuck, they actually didn't have an awful day offensively. Ryan McMahon with an RBI. He stays hot after the big home run yesterday. Bretton Doyle with 2 RBI. Jacob Stallings filling in for Elias Diaz with 2 RBI as well. Tovar, to your point, as you mentioned to me before the game had started, or before we started this podcast, base hit RBI. It just means nothing when your pitching staff has given up 17 runs in a ball game. And I mean, the bullpen, oh my gosh, this is just disgusting. Like I'm looking at the box score from the bullpen. I mean, everybody got shelled. Everybody. Mears, 5 earned runs. Rogers, 2 earned runs. Chavili, 2 earned runs. I mean, it was just a brutal day.
Yeah, there's the biggest issue with the Rockies. This bullpen is bad with a capital B. Because again, I mean, 8 runs, that'll win you ball games. And in fact, the Rockies put themselves back, I think, within 2 late in this game with some of that offense. So like you said, you're definitely happy with the way some of the offense went, especially Ryan McMahon bouncing back from his slump in the past 2 games. But man, that bullpen is bad with a capital B.
Yeah, it is awful. So, all right, let's hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this game today. Looking forward to what's coming. We're going to miss Paul Skeens, I think, with Pittsburgh coming into town this weekend. I'm so upset at that because did you see he got a standing ovation yesterday in St. Louis from a division rival's fan base? Like, that is absurd. So
that's a total Rockies move if I've ever seen one, by the way.
Not something that I would expect from St. Louis. But let's hit a quick break. Paul will tell you about our friends real quick from eBay Motors, and then we'll talk about the look ahead, the outlook for the Rockies, and I also want to dive into this youth movement because I think as bad as this game was, the future is still bright. Stick with us right here on your Locked On Rockies postcast.
Folks, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies postcast. Hope everyone is hanging in there after a brutal 17-9 loss for your Colorado Rockies. I'm Aniello Piro, joined by Paul Holden. Looking forward to doing this every now and again throughout the course of the season. And I want to touch on this a little bit. Well, no, let's just get into it now. Losses like these are bad, right? There's no way to feel good about a game after this, but I am still a natural optimist. You and I have been texting back and forth throughout the games. I think the future is still pretty bright for this team. And dare I say, do they have 3 potential all-star candidates? You've got Elias Diaz, who's been one of the best catchers in baseball, Ezequiel Tovar, who's been one of the best shortstops in baseball, and now you've got Cal Quantrill, who since the start of May has been a top 10, maybe even a top 5 pitcher in the National League. So look, I don't think Quantrill's going to be here for the long haul, but we talked about Tovar. We've talked about Amador. You talked about Greg Jones. Like I said, losses like this don't make you feel any better about the future of this team, but those of us like me and you that are watching these games on a day in, day out basis can see the formation of a core starting to come together.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. That's what's important. That's why you have to let these specific players play. I mean, you know, it's really you've gushed about him. We'll gush about him. Ezequiel Tovar is legit, man. I mean, you pointed out that he should be being referred to as one of the best young shortstops in the game, and it's true. The guy was a Gold Glove finalist last year, and the guy is now backed it up by being not only an elite defensive talent, he's leading the Rockies in home runs right now. I believe he's leading the Rockies in extra base hits, or at least in doubles. I mean, no one's hit doubles like Ezequiel Tovar since Todd Helton, and if you're going to be put into the conversation as the Todd father, that's some pretty darn good company, especially young, when Todd came on the scene and was incredibly young. So there are really exciting players, and I don't think it's quite all-star worthy, but Brenton Doyle has taken the step forward on offense, at least compared to last year. You obviously are hoping for a little bit more, but Brenton Doyle was, you were hoping that he was going to bat a little above 200. He's batting 265 this year. He's his OBP is, his OBP and his OPS are a little low still, but he's showing you something. The big question mark right now, I guess, for a lot of the young guys, well, there's 2, I would say. Eleris Montero is still yet to, and maybe a full season. You know what I mean? With Montero, he's been so screwed by being blocked and roster construction that I really want him to hit as much of an extended look as possible, but we've kind of been on this carousel for a couple of seasons now, and we kind of know what the Montero experience is right now, and mixed in with the fact that where's Nolan Jones? you know, not only getting hurt, but then to find out that his swing needed adjustments as well. He spent a lot longer on this rehab minor league stint, and he spent a lot more time in the minors than I had anticipated this year. So there's these young guys that you're like, wow, I'm sold on Doyle and Tovar. Even Doyle with offensive issues through his career, I will happily watch one of, if not the best defensive center fielder the Rockies have ever had. I will happily see that. But I do have these warning signs with Montero and Jones where it is like, whoa, like the problem with Jones is the strikeouts and everything like that are a massive problem. And Montero is yet to be that 4-hole hitter that he wants to be, that he's always talked about being. So there's a lot to be excited about, but there's a lot still to figure out. Well, I think with some really interesting guys as they get closer to the trade deadline. You mentioned Cal Quantrill, and a lot of people are putting him as trade bait. I'm leaning different. I think the Rockies might try to extend Cal Quantrill, or at least do a smaller deal with him. Maybe not go Kyle Freeland. Maybe they're learning their lesson from the Freeland, Marquez, and Senzatella contracts. But this is a youngish starter that is proven to handle Coors Field, at least for in the smaller sample size of May. I know how the season started. All the Rockies sucked at the beginning of the season. If we're being totally honest, April, that was bad for everybody. But Quantrill not only has bounced back, but he's been sustained. It's been sustained success for him, and he's got that arbitration eligible year. I don't think the Rockies. I think the Rockies might look at him and be like, "Hey, the rotation could be next year or later this year. Freeland, Marquez, Quantrill. Senza's. I don't think Senza's going to pitch this year, but the Rockies might be intrigued by slotting Quantrill in with Kyle Freeland and German Marquez. I mean, it's a quality starting pitcher. Why let him go? Do you think because the Rockies really think that they can get another pitcher at Quantrill's quality, MLB ready in a deadline deal for Cal Quantrill this year? That's the question I've been asking.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that's probably no. And I think the only person that could yield that type of return is probably Elias Diaz, just because it's such a premium position, right? But we don't even know if they're going to trade him, which would just be a mistake if they don't go down that road. But Quantrill's 29, so not quite a young buck, but also not, an aging starter. And at the end of the day, pitchers like Cal Quantrill that figure out how to pitch consistently well for this organization do not come around often. And I think if you're the Rockies, knowing that you lack some identity within your starting rotation. Kyle Freeland's been up and down. How's Marquez going to be when he comes back? I think giving Quantrill a look for an extension, to your point with the Arbier as well, is definitely not a bad idea. So I'm curious because, like I said, I know they lose 17-9 today, but pitching is typically the common denominator of the Colorado Rockies struggles on a season in, season out basis. So I think Quantrill's been great. And frankly, look, we know the Rockies aren't going to be super engaging in the trade markets, but if they're not going to get a return that's bringing back some premium players at a premium position for a starting pitcher in Quantrill who's been on point, then I think you take your chance. Unlike John Gray, right? Where it's like, John, we'll get the consent, but that was stupid. And I know my guy, Drew Kreisman, likes to argue the other side sometimes, but like, what are you doing? Trevor Story, what are you doing? Like, it just made no sense. I think it's a little bit of a different approach with Quantrill. And then real quick on Montero, I have been hearing from some people in and around the organization. I'm sure it's floated out there on social media. It's a maturity thing. I think it's taking the game serious on a day in and day out basis. And I don't know the full extent of that, but I think it's just taking that next step as a professional. I like his defense at first base. I actually think he's been pretty solid in recent memory. But you need the consistency from the hitting department from Montero. So I agree with you. I think Montero, Nolan Jones, two big question marks about the future of this franchise. But with Quantrill in particular, I think you can actually be a little bit more flexible with how you try to play your cards on that one.
Well, because just put it this way, right? Take the Rockies rotation as it is now. Would you take Quantrill or would you take Gomber? And Gomber's been good, but we have seen a lot of Gomber.
Yes.
And I think it's really important to put the context of Gomber. He's never really broken through. The situation, of course, of how he got to Colorado is always going to be part of his story. And I love when we have these moments. And you can see it today. He was pissed. That dude's got a fire and an energy. But if you're telling me, hey, this rotation won't be there, you're keeping one starter in the current rotation, taking Kyle Freeland out of the equation right now. Who's going to be who do you want the Rockies to keep around in the rotation? It would just be Cal Quantrill. I think Ryan Feltner deserves a little bit more. The struggles at Coors Field is again another weird Rockies thing that, of course, you have a guy that you can't give him any sort of advice on how to succeed at home. But I watch Cal Quantrill pitch and I'm like, this is a guy that he strikes people out, which is just something the Rockies desperately need. You mentioned John Gray. Easily one of the big. I think losing John Gray is one of the worst things the Rockies have done in terms of just it just doesn't make sense. It was a guy that wanted to be here. You could have matched the money, and he would have been here. Even with the health issues that he's had that we've known, he's still been arguably better than just about any Rockies starter. So I think when the Rockies have a major league guy, they can't give the immediate Rockies thing of you're a good Rockies Coors Field pitcher, 5-year extension. Here you go. Here's a 5-year deal. You can't do that with Quantrill, but can you do 3 years or maybe even just another year extension to cover arbitration with an opt-out after or something like that, where you can explore trading him next year. I don't think when teams are looking to trade with the Rockies, they're looking to add pitchers outside of the bullpen last year when they moved a lot of bullpen pieces and teams were interested in those because last year was a little bit different story, right? Where the bullpen was the strength for the Rockies pitching and the starters weren't. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation, but when I look at the pitchers that I'd want to hang around, Cal Quantrill's at the top of the list.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. Let's hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue along with the conversation. I got a few words from our friends over at FanDuel. But yeah, it is almost trade season as well. So I've got some thoughts about how the Rockies operate with these types of situations. Stick with us. We'll be right back here in just a few minutes on your Locked On Rockies postcast. All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at FanDuel real quick. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, players props, totals, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And again, FanDuel.com/lockedon is where you're going to want to go to get hooked up with our friends over at FanDuel. And I always like to say this as well, man. If you're not betting with FanDuel, it's a mistake. We've got the U.S. Open starting tomorrow in the Gulf. We've got the Euro Cup, I believe, starts on Friday. Let's go Italy. They're going to have everything from the American sports to the international sports. Our friends over at FanDuel are going to take great care of you. So FanDuel.com/lockedon is the place to go. Let them know that the Locked On Rockies postcast sent you, and good luck on your wagers. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies postcast. Getting ready to put a bow on the show here with my guy, Paul Holden. Where can they follow you on social media, my man?
You can find us at LO Rockies if you want to follow mostly Rockies stuff. You can find me at Paul Holden 33 for other stuff. But if you want the Rockies stuff, just follow the show account. That's where I fire off the Rockies hot takes and everything. And make sure, folks, that you're checking out both the Locked On Rockies and Locked On Rockies postcast YouTube shows. The Locked On Rockies postcast is on the new Locked On Denver Sports channel, which you're going to want to be able that you're subscribed to, because it ain't just Rockies content you're getting on that channel. You're getting the whole 9 yards over there, folks. That's Broncos, that's Avalanche, that's Nuggets, and I'm sure that's Buffaloes as well there, even though I'm a little bit of a Rams guy. My brother's a Rams alum, so I got to give some love there. But check that out. But best way, if you want to help support our stuff, those YouTube channels, liking the videos, subscribing, that stuff is a massive, massive help.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, guys. And I'm on social at Media by AP as well if you want to follow along. But all right, let's do some big point takeaways here. And I just want to throw this out there because some of the information that I've been able to gather, and this has been reported on from like the big guys, right? Like the Buster Onlys and the Kirchens and the Rosenthals of the world. Not a lot of teams like to do business with the Rockies, because the Rockies kind of just operate in their own way. Like there's usually a pretty uniform evaluation of players. Like maybe some teams value this player a little bit more than others, but like everything that I've heard is the Rockies are borderline delusional when it comes to valuing their own. They do. That's why they don't make any trades. I mean, when was the last time the Rockies made like a significant trade where they're bringing somebody in, not giving somebody away plus $50 million in the instance of the St. Louis Cardinals with Arenado? But that's where I'm curious, because I do think Dick Monfort and Bill Schmidt and company have to be looking around the room. And this isn't like 2015 where it's like you still had Tulo, you still had Carga, you had Arenado, Story coming up, LeMahieu, Mark Reynolds, right? Like they don't have a bevy of talent. They've got some young talent, not a lot to make up the entirety of the lineup, but I feel like they're stuck in this purgatory mode, right? It's harder to justify not making moves if you're the Rockies right now. So, but I'm curious if that is how they think, what moves they do end up making, because we talked about Elias Diaz. He's a hot commodity. Do they look at trading Ryan McMahon, or are they going to have that heartfelt attachment to him because he's a homegrown guy like we've seen time and time again? But regardless, there is a young nucleus budding, and the Rockies would be smart to offload some of these middle-aged, aging players to add to that youth movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what they have to do, plain and simple. And it's what the most encouraging sign that you can think the Rockies will do something similar is what they did last year. The Rockies were the most active at the trade deadline in last year than I can remember. I believe they made, I think, close to 7 deals, something like that. And what did they do? They shed a bunch of expiring veteran contracts and refilled the system. Will those players pan out? We don't know. We have to figure that out and see how it goes, but that's how you handle it. The Rockies cannot stand pat at the deadline this year. I love Elias Diaz. I think there's an argument that Elias Diaz has now at least etched himself into the conversation of greatest Rockies catcher of all time. You say what you will, and there's and all this stuff, but I'm just talking For 3 years, Elias Diaz has been great. He's now played back-to-back all-star caliber seasons at catcher, something the Rockies have never had happen ever. By the way, I was at the all-star game last year, and I saw Elias Diaz do that live, which was one of my favorite baseball moments of my life. But I don't want to see Elias Diaz go, but you have to. The injury will complicate this, but you got to trade Elias Diaz. You got to, and just like, because you're gifted the same thing, because a lot of people are saying the same exact thing at this point last year. It's Elias Diaz. Are you going to get this much? And Elias Diaz will make a team better. I got Cubs. I got some buddies that are Cubs fans, and it seems like he would be the exact type of fit that the Cubs are looking for. He's a guy that is totally a locker. You can tell that guy is a locker room plus. That guy brings energy. He reminds me. He reminds me of Gerardo Parra, the guys that are veterans that understand their roles, that just really bring a vibe to the team. Because what I love about Elias Diaz, if he was playing in this game, the Rockies were down 17-8, 8 or 8-17 or whatever. If he had an at bat in the ninth and they were down 12, he would be swinging with trying to score 13 runs in one swing. I love Elias Diaz, but just to circle back, I think this team will make some moves. I don't think they will be earth-shattering moves. I think this team is committing to Ryan McMahon. I think they have made that abundantly clear. Is this team committed to Brendan Rodgers? I think that's the name to watch here. If you're going to be okay with Amador filling in for him, while he's hurt, and you got Alan Trejo, are you really that and you're already in the situation you're at now? You got Rodgers with one more arbitration eligible year. You're telling me Seattle doesn't want Brendan Rodgers? You know what I mean? You're telling me that there isn't a team that wants a guy that gets better listen. If you follow Brendan Rodgers' history outside of the injury worries, you're going to get a hitter that's going to be one of the best hitters in baseball because he's always great when the weather is warm in the second half of the season. So there are moves to be made from this Rockies team. And I think if they go big, those are the two biggest names that they will move this year. But I don't know. I think Montero could be floated. I mean, he could be a change of scenery guy because, again, you mentioned this on the postcast too. The Chris Bryant conundrum is going to curse this team. And again, it's going to be and this season too, you have Charlie Blackmon for the rest of the season. I think we can really confidently say the Charlie Blackmon experience is going to be ending this year. I was saying it all last year, but he performed way too well and got hurt for too long for us. Now you're kind of seeing that Charlie Blackmon's good, but he ain't the same exact Chuck. So, but there's another name, right? Is Charlie Blackmon getting traded? Charlie Blackmon ain't getting traded, folks. They would have traded him multiple times. There was multiple times to do it. This is definitely that. So do the Rockies make a big move? No, I don't think they go any bigger than Elias Diaz. I do think Elias Diaz gets traded. It just on paper makes the most sense, especially as it opens up a door for Hunter Goodman to get some major league catching experience, which the team wants. It's just will they do it? We saw there's not as much of that stock like there was last year. Easy to get rid of. It's a little bit harder for a pill to swallow for the Rockies to move on from Ryan McMahon or Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And with your point on Rodgers and Amador, baptism by fire. Like here's the thing. Like it does no, and like you keep Alan Trejo obviously to have that backup option or a more veteran option. But at the end of the day, like you need, what is the difference about Amador working on his craft at AA or AAA at this point when you have nothing really cooking for you on the major league level? He's hit for big numbers down at AA, and we know AAA with the PCL league's just a little out of whack in general, so it's hard to gauge the success and failures at that level. But what do you have to lose? I don't think that you'll stunt his growth by any, maybe it takes a little bit longer, but I'm all on board of just moving forward with this youth movement. And so we'll see what happens, but I do agree with you. I think Diaz is the one guy that you probably have to look to move if you're a smart organization, which is sometimes questionable, but we shall see. All right, before we get out of here, my man, the Rockies have an opportunity to make up some ground. They've got a 10-game homestand coming up. They'll open up against the Pittsburgh Pirates on Friday. Also a much-deserved and needed rest day coming up tomorrow as they travel back from this road trip. But they'll take on Pittsburgh for 3 games, and then they'll bring the Dodgers in for 4, and they'll round out with a 3-game series against the Washington Nationals. If I put you on the spot, which I'm going to, what do you think the Rockies' record is over those 10 games?
I think the Rockies surprised some folks. I think they probably still finish closer to 500. If the Rockies play the Dodgers, I have little confidence. The Rockies and the Pirates seem to play really weird series, and I think it definitely matters who's the home team, because I think the Rockies are worse in Pittsburgh, and I think the Pirates are worse in Colorado. And the Nationals, though, the Nationals have beaten the Rockies in handle, and they're a really interesting team. I think when you have the Pirates and the Nationals, those are two teams that are looking to make some noise this year and are in positions to still be fighting for playoff caliber stuff in weaker divisions. But it's the Rockies are a better team at home, and they have shown that they have some Coors Field magic. So I'm going to sit it right in that 500. Best case, I think they win 2 series out of 3, and it ain't going to be, and they beat one of those being the Dodgers at home. I think they could surprise. But I don't know, 4-game set against the Dodgers, that makes me just roll my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I would guess realistically 4-6, just to be honest with you, just because that's how it goes. So a game below 500, but it would not surprise me if they figure out a way to steal a couple of games and end up 500 or 6-4, to your point. So I am curious to see how it shakes out. But the Rockies coming home after a long road trip again, those 3 series against the Pirates, the 3-game series, 4 games against the Dodgers, and then 3 games against Washington as the season rolls along. But my man, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Locked On Rockies postcast. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to get off the chest before we get out of here?
No, I mean, it was a frustrating series, but another example of how it's fun to watch all the other teams play. You don't get to see the Twins that much, and I think that was a fun team to watch a little bit. Hoping that the Rockies can not give up a million runs, though.
That would be good. So we'll keep an eye on the Rockies pitching staff. We'll keep an eye on the Major League Baseball trade deadline, which is ever rapidly approaching. And hopefully this Rockies team can try to replicate what they did in the month of May and pick up some slack and finish June with a winning record. Because as I always like to say on this show, baby steps. Be competitive. Get people back into being interested in watching your games. And I know there's some hula hoops that they have to jump through for that. But at the end of the day, the Rockies have a little bit of an identity crisis right now, which is not good because this team is fun. They've got a young core, and the only way that's going to change is providing some optimism and a plan for the future. So we'll see if the Rockies can continue to work on those fronts as we move along. But for Paul Holden, I am Aniello Piro. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Locked On Rockies postcast. Once again, be sure to smash that subscribe button on the brand spanking new Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. You can check out Paul all the time on the standard Locked On Rockies podcast, and I'll be here after just about each and every game on the Locked On Rockies postcast. Paul, my man, thank you so much. We'll do it again soon. And for all the Rockies fans out there, enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll see what happens in this 10-game homestand.